So this is an Aqua One aquarium, and this aquarium has got a top filter. Now, one of the things to be aware of with these top filters, which is, let's say, a little bit of a disadvantage, is that they really need to be cleaned regularly, because if they're not cleaned regularly, they build up a whole lot of crap. And when you go to clean it, it's really hard not to get all that crap back into the fish tank again. So in a perfect world, I really rather either have a canister filter, and with the canister filter you can isolate the waste out. So you can pull the waste out, and then the waste is isolated away from the aquarium. But with these filters, they can actually be relatively effective, but they really need to be cleaned regularly. When they're not cleaned regularly, then they can actually bank up, and I've seen water go back over the back of the aquarium, which isn't so fun. And then the waste can find their way back into the aquarium. The other thing too is I really rather use polyfilter as opposed to filter wool. So filter wool just relies on the waste getting caught in the filter wool, but when you pick it up, half of it just all falls out. Whereas if you go for polyfilter, the polyfilter actually clings on to the particles, so they don't find their way back into the aquarium again. So it's a bit disappointing when you go to clean a filter and then suddenly all the crap's back in the fish tank. So we've got a few different biological medias in here. Now this one here is the best. This is Marine Pure. Marine Pure offers parallel nitrifying and denitrifying bacteria, so that'll give you the biggest capacity. Then we've got a little bit of Matrix, which is like an old school version of Marine Pure, and nowhere near as good, but it does work. So I'm sort of happy to see all that. All these medias need to be cleaned in water from the fish tank, not water from the tap. So seeing this aquarium has been going for a while, one of the best things you can do to overhaul your interest is to swap some stuff around. So in this case, this plant's looking a bit tired, so I would consider either putting it towards the back or even chucking it. We should get a bit more life out of this plant. What I mean by life is that if we put it in the sun and leave it there for a day, and then we flip it over and leave it there for a day, and then hose it, put it back in, the sun will bleach off a lot of the algae. Now it looks like there's a very large Plecostomus in here, and then we've also got a rainbow shark. The rainbow shark does seem a little bit skinny, so I would be wanting to make sure that we've got some Spectrum wafers or something for them to feed on. Now the other thing that concerns me about this aquarium is that the surface is very, very flat. So basically, I would be suggesting that this aquarium gets a revamp. And in a revamp, I would want some new fake plants, because the fake plants do have a bit of a shelf life. And I would want to get some extra fish. Now, getting some extra fish is going to be very much governed by what's called the biological capacity of the aquarium. And the biological capacity of the aquarium is going to be limited because of the size of the filter, but more so because the surface area is very flat. So I would highly recommend getting something like a power head, or a lot more bubbles would actually do the job. So therefore, I want to break up the surface and get a lot more water flow in this aquarium. More water flow is going to help keep the aquarium cleaner. I would actually consider getting an internal filter for this particular tank. So Aqua have a turbo filter, and a turbo filter which aimed up will agitate the surface, will turn the water around much better. That'll increase your dissolved oxygen level and redox potential, and it will allow you to get more fish. Now, with a very established aquarium, you need to be careful putting new fish in, because quite often you're already at your biological capacity because the fish have grown to maximize their biological capacity. So you need to look at what potentially you need to change. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to test the water. I'm going to find out what all your levels are before we recommend too much more. Now, another thing to be aware of is here we've got an air stone, which is putting air straight into the filter. So that's not ideal. So that's going to put a little bit more stress on the filter. We do have a little air pump here, but a little water pump here, but he's aiming down. One of the most important things about a water pump is we really want it aiming up, because what we don't want is this flat surface. because this flat surface means we're going to have a high surface tension, and that means we're going to have low dissolved oxygen level, increased CO2, and lower redox potential. So these are really, really simple changes we can make. And now ultimately an aquarium is 50% water quality. So soon we'll know what the water quality is like, but it's 50% nutrients. So the food you choose is the absolutely most important thing. So this food here, Danichi, this would be the highest quality food you can get. So that one's got a big tick. Most of your flake foods and stuff is just processed crap. So I'm very happy to see that one. But this is a very small pellet and they're very big fish. So the foods I would be recommending for this tank is probiotics by New Life Spectrum. And the probiotic is I know I'd want a larger pellet. And the probiotic have probiotic bacteria in it. And what that means is that when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo. So it actually keeps the aquarium heaps cleaner. And I would also want some Danichi color. And with that combination of those two foods, I think you find that your fish will be super healthy and they will be super clean. Now, because we've got a little bit of evaporation, which is completely normal, but today we do not want to do a very big water change because it's relatively cold here at the moment. And the last thing you want to do is shock your clown loaches, because clown loaches are a skinned animal, not a scaled animal, and they get white spot very, very easily. So two things I would recommend. Number one is don't do a real big water change. And number two is make sure you've got medication on hand, which do we? No, like we've got some. So with various fish, it's really great to have a little bit of white spot medication on hand. And then if you do get a white spot medication and you do use it, make sure you don't have carbon or polyfilter in here. And away we go. So right now, this tank has a surprising amount of fish in it. The longer you sit here, the more fish seem to pop out at you. But because this tank has been running for a while now, this tank would be running perfectly at biological capacity. And what that means is for this aquarium and for what's on it and for what's done with it, it would be running to its capacity because everyone would have grown to that capacity. Now, if you go chucking fish in here, then you have to expect some to die because Mother Nature only allows you to have a certain amount of biological waste within an environment. So there are lots of things that you can do to increase your biological capacity, and this tank could easily hold a lot more fish. But the things that you'd need to do is probably change from filter wool to polyfilter, because the polyfilter is not just going to trap the waste. Because the idea with polyfilter is you trap all the waste here, and the idea with normal filter wool is you trap all the waste here and then you've got to keep cleaning it. If you clean this really regularly, then you will pull waste out and it will be an advantage. Now, if you're not cleaning it regularly, then all you're doing is getting all your junk from your room and chucking it in the hallway. You're not actually doing anything with it. You're just moving it from one place to another place. It is only when you take it out that it's of benefit. Now, on the other hand, your polyfilter is not like that because your polyfilter is going to cling all of the particles and not let them go. And it's going to take all of your dissolved nutrients out of solution. So it is actually going to improve the water. So when you put polyfilter in there, you put it in there, it starts off white. Over a period of time, it will change color and tell you what it's removing because it's got a color chart on the back. And when it turns to black, that means it's finished. Now, the other thing about polyfilter is it's going to remove all your accumulants. And what I mean by accumulants is that we can test the water and we can test various things. And they're going to tell you if you've got a major problem. But on the other hand, there are a whole bunch of things that can build up in an aquarium. And over time, as those things build up, pheromones, phenols, all sorts of stuff that we really don't understand that well, the polyfilter is removing all of them. So the accumulants are no longer something we need to worry about. If you're changing the water very regularly, then accumulants are not a major problem. If you're not changing the water so regularly, then accumulants absolutely become a problem. And that's another one of the reasons why polyfilter is so valuable. And the solution to these tanks, especially as they've maybe not had the maintenance that they want, is small regular services. So today we're going to do a bit of a water change, but the filter will need cleaning, and that will take an amount of the water, and the gravel is visibly very dirty. So to overhaul this tank, it's much better not to do one big overhaul, because changing too much water definitely creates stress on the animals. It's really better to do a small improvement and then sooner than later do another small improvement, and that sort of stabilizes it, makes a lot less shock on the animal, especially when you've got fish like clown loaches and they're prone to white spot. So you want to make sure you know what white spot is, and you want to make sure you're looking out for white spot, because white spot is super simple to fix, but the earlier you diagnose it and treat it, the less of an issue it actually is. So this tank is in a fairly vulnerable state right now, so we do need to be careful how we manage this aquarium, because at the moment there's no ammonia, there is a tiny bit of nitrite, there's no nitrate, but the thing that does concern me is that KH is 0 and the GH is pretty much 0, which does mean that the fish are going to be compromised in their immune system. Now, if they are actually getting this food, then that's going to be a huge advantage, because as a advisor, basically what happens is I go to people's houses, and if I test the water and the water is bad and the fish still look okay, then often that will mean they've got good or feeding good quality foods. If I go there and the water quality is not good, maybe not as bad as the last house, but the food quality is bad, then that's when it makes the biggest impact on the fish, because fish are really 50% water quality and 50% food quality. So making sure these guys get good food is very important. Improving the water quality is going to be relatively important, and not doing too much to the tank, because we don't want to cause extra stress to these fish. And then using products like Vogel, which are artificial immune stimulants, are things that are also going to help. Now with these top filters, it's really important that your biological media is on the bottom, because what you don't want to do is have any sponge or anything under it, or it's just too hard to clean. So you can actually see here that this is totally clogged up to the point where nothing can penetrate this filth. So what I'd be recommending is this is either not used at all or it's on top, because to clean some sponge that's on top, you just grab it, clean it and put it back. But cleaning it, if it's underneath, not only will you not clean it, you'll actually not see it. So what we're doing now is just cleaning the media in water that we've taken out of the fish tank, because what we want is all the good bacteria to stay in the system. So you don't ever want to hose out these medias. So if you look at that, that's all your filth. It's much easier to have your biomedia at the top, have your mechanical on top of that, and then when that gets dirty, you just give it a clean. Then you can put your media back, not exposed to tap water. Any of your fish waste, freshwater fish waste, particularly when you're cleaning your filters and stuff, try and make sure they end up finding their way back into the garden, because it's absolutely full of wonderful nutrients. Obviously don't tip salt water in your garden, but don't tip it down the drain, because it's a waste of good nutrients, which your garden will really appreciate. So this, being a very old aquarium, has got a couple of rows of fluorescent lighting. There was originally 3, but these light tubes are very old. So as the tubes get old, they don't necessarily go out, but you are going to lose intensity and spectrum. So it's not going to look anywhere near as good, and the colors are just not going to pop. So if we did consider getting some new fish for this aquarium to jazz it up, I'd probably think of something like some nice colored peacock cichlids, because they're not aggressive and their beautiful metallic colors would really add to this tank. And then probably some electric yellows is something else I'd get, just to add, once again, some nice bright colors to this tank. And then even something for the top, like an archer fish, would be an option. There'd be heaps of different options. But if we did think about getting some replacement light tubes, after about a year, you'll notice a decline. By 2 years, you've really lost a lot of the intensity and spectrum, and your tank's just not going to look as good. So an aquarium, the light is really an important part for making the colors pop and make the aquarium look as beautiful as possible, because the aim is really to have an environment where the fish thrive, not survive, and where, care is taken to the presentation of the tank.